Today's guest was crowned America's Next Drag Superstar on the season finale of RuPaul's Drag Race in May. Based on her tremendous performance in the Vaudevillians off-Broadway, she may well be Broadway's Next Drag Superstar, too. Please welcome Jinkx Monsoon.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me again.
I am so thrilled you are here, Jinkx. You are in a blockbuster. You're in a blockbuster down in the basement of Laurie Beachman Theater. But you came to do a couple weeks of this show, and it's turned into like this big summer hit.
Well, it actually started as a one-night only thing. When they offered the slot to me, they wanted me to do a one-woman show and just do like my songbook, basically. And I agreed to it, and then I wrote back to them, I'm like, but have you ever seen this other show that I do? And I sent them our demo reel, and the Vaudevillians had enough of a buzz around it, just from people doing their research about me from Drag Race.
Yeah.
So when that started selling tickets and started selling tickets really well, we started adding more dates. And then once we were in performance, the reviews started coming out, and those were good enough that like it justified more and more dates. Now we're extended. A one-night show in July got extended all the way to October now.
It's amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing. I have to tell you that it is probably, counting everything I saw on Broadway last season, one of the best things I've seen. I think it is. I think everyone needs to see it. I think that if someone might think the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race is, it's not a drag show. I don't know. I don't want to classify things, but it's definitely a theater piece.
Yeah, I think we get, I'd say about 50-50. Any given night, about 50-50. The audience is either there to see me from RuPaul's Drag Race, and they come expecting like a RuPaul's Drag Race experience, and then 50% of it knows what they're getting, that they're used to theater shows, and they're coming in expecting a cabaret show. But the people who come in strictly to see Jinkx Monsoon leave really happy that they saw what they saw instead. You know, lots of my Drag Race sisters have come to see the show, and they're like, Manila said, "I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that, and I'm not upset about it."
There's no lip syncing for your life. You are singing, and you have an amazing voice. I mean, you're a trained actor. I mean, you studied musical theater. You've done a lot of great roles in Seattle, and you absolutely have the pipes. Are you enjoying doing that much singing?
I do. I mean, it's a little rough on the two-show nights because we go all out for it. But I love singing. I think I can't ever decide if I'm more of an actor or more of a singer. So I really like these opportunities where I get to do both.
So let's set this up. You are Kitty Witless. And you are with Major Scales. Yeah.
And his name in the show is Dr. Dan Von Dandy.
Oh, right.
Major Scales is his drag name.
It's very confusing. There's a lot of personas.
So there's Jerick Hoffer, who plays Jinkx Monsoon, who plays Kitty Witless.
Right.
And then there's Richard Andreessen, who plays Major Scales, who plays Dr. Dan Von Dandy.
And you guys actually met in school in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
And both of these personas, Kitty Witless and Dr. Dan, are kind of reiterations of our clown forms that we created in Commedia dell'arte class, clown class. Yeah.
So the concept I think is genius. You are a vaudeville act. Don't spit out. Are you okay?
It's hard with your lipstick sometimes to tell if you've got your lips on.
I have to ask you, since now that you are America's Next Drag Superstar, what is the longest you've gone since then out of drag? I mean, you were
2 days.
How were what was the occasion of those 2 days? And you seem kind of like pictures of you out of drag. You're like sort of a grungy, very like.
Well, I'm just from Seattle.
Cool. You're a cool guy. Oh, shit, the Seattle.
I'm a gay hipster.
You're a gay hipster, right?
Or just gay.
So you seem like the absolute opposite of drag when you're.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a very dressy uppy person. I mean, like, I seem dressed up because I wear some stuff that's out of the norm for a guy my age when I'm out of drag. But normally what I wear is like pleather leggings and like oversized black sweaters. And that's just kind of the norm in Seattle, is kind of like androgynous grunge. But it's not typical for a 25-year-old boy to be like walking around looking like Elaine Stritch, but in my oversized sweaters and my beanies and stuff. But I like it.
Okay, so let's go back to the show.
Yeah.
So you're a vaudeville duo, married vaudeville duo, and the concept is that you were frozen in an avalanche. Is that right?
The concept is that we actually worked in the 1920s.
Right.
And as we were touring through Antarctica, we
As you do.
were subject to a freak avalanche. We were frozen alive, and thanks to global warming, we've thawed out. But so that's the premise of why we're here.
Right.
But the conceit of the show is that since we worked in the 1920s and wrote original music back then and have been frozen alive for the last century, we actually wrote most of the pop songs that are so famous today.
Everyone stole your
music. We
music.
just never got copyrights on it.
Right.
So you're familiar with like Britney Spears' version of Toxic and
Right.
Janis Joplin's version of Piece of My Heart and Madonna's version of Music, but we claim to have originally written them in the 1920s as ragtime vaudeville
Right.
tunes.
Which is great because you can kind of do anything under that. And
Yeah.
for example, who knew that I Will Survive was actually performed on Broadway first? we learned
That's
from this
the joke,
show.
yeah. I Will Survive is actually a power ballad sung by Nora Helmer in the sequel to A Doll's House, which we titled A Doll's House 2 Electric Boogaloo.
I would love to see these characters and this idea just keep having a life beyond this. I mean, if I had money, I would move it to Broadway.
We've
But I
already
don't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
We've talked about the sequel show. The sequel show revolves around Kitty being pregnant.
Oh.
And so it's all songs about babies and songs about life and questioning your future. And then we have a holiday show, which is reappropriating songs to be about Christmas or Hanukkah. Kitty sings her breakout hit, I'm a Jew, which is our version of the Eiffel 65 song, I'm Blue.
Oh, no.
So it's just, I'm a Jew, idle deed, idle die, idle deed, idle die. So, I mean, like, it's always just like kind of whatever we think of, we find a way of justifying it.
So let's go back to that little boy in Portland, right? You grew up in Portland and then you went to school in Seattle, is that right?
Yeah.
The first moment that you talked about your grandmother a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, you were really close to your grandmother.
I was really close to my grandmother and my aunt as well as my mother, because my mother was very young when she had me, and my parents split up when I was very young, basically just after having my little brother, and my grandma was newly divorced as well. And me and my mom and my young brother moved in with my grandma and my aunt, and we all lived in this gigantic house in Portland. And my aunt, she was kind of like a second mom to me, and my mom was kind of like a mom. I mean, my grandmother was like a mom to all of us still. So my mom and I kind of, I don't know, we had a relationship that was more like a brother and a sister
Okay.
in my early years than like a mom and a son.
Right.
And my aunt and I had a very, similar relationship. And then my grandma was the matriarch of the family. And then in my teenage years, I spent a lot of time.
You came out really young.
Yeah, I came
out of the
out
closet.
at 14.
Right.
And I was nervous about telling my grandmother. And my mom, was worried that, my grandmother was too old-fashioned to handle it. And when I finally talked to my grandma about it, she said, I don't care if you fall in love with a Filipino man, an African-American woman, or anything, just as long as you find the thing that makes you happy. So.
Have you fallen in love with a Filipino man or an African-American woman?
Not yet.
You're opening options.
My music partner, Major Scales, is half Filipino.
Oh,
but that's
okay.
But that's loveless. That's a loveless marriage. Yeah, so I was really close to my grandma. She was among the first people to know that I was doing drag.
Why? What started that? You did it at a nightclub, right?
Well, when my mom got her own place, we moved to another side of Portland, but my grandma lived near the nightclub that I was going to on the weekends. And it's like it's Portland's only all-age gay nightclub, and it's probably one of the all-ages
nightclub.
The Escape.
Right.
It's probably one of the only all-ages gay nightclubs in the country. And they did drag shows there.
Wow.
And at about age 15, I had an interest in performing in drag. And I started doing it I would get ready at my grandma's house, and then I would bike down to the club, either in drag or with my costumes in my backpack or something. And my grandma always got last looks. She always took last looks and said what she thought of my outfit and stuff, and if I needed to change my hair or something.
And she gave you wigs.
She bought me the wig, the Marie Antoinette wig I was wearing on the show was my
wow.
Christmas present that year from her. And she, like in the 50s and 60s, sometimes women wore like styled wigs.
Yeah.
So one of the first wigs I ever wore was a wig from the 60s of my grandma's.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you clearly were interested in musical theater early on
Mm-hmm.
too. Who sort of exposed you to that, and what were like the first shows that you fell in love with, or?
Well, I was always singing. Like as a kid, I always was singing around the house and putting on little shows for the video camera and stuff. And it was mostly Disney tunes and stuff. And my aunt turned me on to Bette Midler at a very early
Okay.
age, and so we would sing a lot of Bette Midler tunes. But I never really I think I got into musicals about age 14 when I saw Hedwig and the Angry Inch, the movie version.
Right.
And when I found out that that was a musical, and I was like, wait, musicals can be about this kind of stuff
Right,
too, and
right.
and they can be modern and edgy, and so at first I was only into like rock musicals,
Uh-huh.
and then I saw the Bernadette Peters version of Into the Woods, the
Yeah.
archival
Yeah, the
performance,
PBS, yeah.
and Sondheim changed what I thought about all musicals in
Wow.
one moment. It's kind of like you can't go to Shakespeare pieces without having a little bit of an ear for Shakespeare,
Uh-huh.
or you kind of like have to adapt yourself to
Right.
Shakespeare pieces to truly like sit there and listen to it and not guess what they're talking about the whole time. And I felt like Into the Woods trained my ear to listen to musicals, because now I can go see any musical like from the Golden Age or from today, and I really like know how to watch that musical and listen to it. Like Sondheim kind of taught me that.
What
So
if s-
most of my favorite musicals are Sondheim
I
musicals.
wonder if Sondheim watches Drag Race.
I don't know.
I have a feeling Sondheim might know who Jinkx Monsoon is.
Well, I've some of my parodies. I don't do a lot of parodies, but I have some parodies that are Sondheim parodies. Like instead of a little priest from Sweeney Todd, I do a little twink, and I've changed all the lyrics to be about archetypes in the gay community.
Uh-huh.
And I do the ladies in drag instead of the ladies who lunch.
Nice.
Which is basically the same themes of the ladies who lunch, but applied to drag queens because they're very similar. and I perform a lot of stuff from Gypsy because I really relate to not only the story of Gypsy Rose Lee, but then the character Mama Rose as well.
Right.
So.
We at Broadway.com have become a little obsessed with you ever since we found out that you were interested in Broadway and that you have these talents. I mean, I'm a big fan of Drag Race all the time, but there was something special about you. You know, you kind of saw it because you were definitely, and it's interesting. There was a lot of drama on the season because a lot of the other girls didn't seem to get Jinkx, right? I mean, you definitely have sort of a different
Well,
mold.
I mean, myself as the artist who created Jinkx, I'm really into musical theater and theater. So I take drag as just an extension of my performance art career.
Right. So is this like
And-
do you consider it like an acting?
Yeah,
Like,
I think,
an acting role?
no matter how conscious the drag queen is who's doing it, I think all drag queens are actors.
Right.
I mean, some drag queens' personas are essentially just them in drag, but they have like a heightened, like any drag queen will tell you once she's in drag, it's an elevated version of themselves.
Right.
Everything I do with drag is like theatrical. So I'll opt to wear like a period gown to portray a certain kind of character I want that might be a little less fashionable or a little dated today, or like a floral pantsuit.
Why not?
You know? I'll opt to wear those if I feel like that's the character I want to portray, and I kind of throw modern fashion out the window. But I'm from Seattle, where like Seattle is going through this like 70s resurgence, and like the whole scene in Seattle is either like bringing back the 20s, 30s, 40s and like steampunk fashion, bringing back 70s in like the grungy hippie fashion, or
Wow.
bringing back 90s in like the ironic hipster culture.
Okay.
Like it's all happening in Seattle like that right now. And that's where I learned to dress myself. And so on a national standing, I think, I was the first Northwest queen ever to go on, so it was a hard gulp to swallow at first.
You were also the first. I remember it was shocking the first episode finding out you were narcoleptic. That was like, oh my, like that's. I don't know anyone who's narcoleptic, so it's sort of like I feel like.
Do you know Cyndi Lauper suffers from narcolepsy?
Oh really?
Yeah, apparently. I mean,
Oh wow.
I didn't hear her say it, but
Well, tell me about it. So what does that mean? I mean, there were moments on Drag Race where.
and I can attest that all the moments they aired are authentic,
genuine moments.
sleep
Okay.
attacks. That's the term for it, sleep attack.
So wait, it just, and then when I was watching the Vaudevillians, I thought, can you control it?
It's not that I can control it. It's that narcolepsy, it's like depression. It's a chemical imbalance thing. And so everybody's version of it is different. And some
Okay.
people suffer from mild depression. Some people suffer from mild narcolepsy. And then like full-blown narcolepsy, like the textbook case, there's studies where people with narcolepsy, like they could laugh too hard and that would trigger it.
Okay.
And not only they either fall asleep, or there's also a symptom called cataplexy where they just go completely slack, like all
Wow.
their muscle control goes and they go completely limp. Luckily, I don't suffer from that because that would probably really interfere with my performance career. But
Yeah,
but with moderate narcolepsy, I control it with medication and
Okay.
steady diet, and basically, I just have to make sure I take 2 naps a day. If I don't, I'm just a zombie. But
Wow.
but it doesn't happen on stage because I'm like performing and there's adrenaline and it's kind of counteracting the symptoms
Right.
of my narcolepsy. But I did fall asleep when I played Tybalt in high school in Romeo and Juliet. Tybalt spends a long time lying on stage dead.
And
And I fell asleep and I missed my bows because I was just in the tomb, dead. And I didn't get to take my bow that night because no one knew where I was.
Oh my
But I was
God.
just asleep in my tomb.
Let's talk about some of the other roles you've played. You played Moritz in Spring Awakening.
That was one of my first. I mean, the first time I worked in Seattle was Mistress Quickly in
Right.
Henry V.
You did a few sort of gender-bending performances. I read some bad reviews of some of those shows that all said you were amazing.
Well, it was an iffy take on the show. I believed in it because when you're doing a show, you kind of just have to put the faith in the director, put the faith in the script. Because if you start naysaying it in rehearsals, it's going to ruin your performance. So,
Right. This is Henry V.
Henry V,
Right.
yeah. So it was set in the '60s, and it was like
okay.
about the Vietnam War crisis, but it was set, but it was still in England and blah 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 blah. So the justification was kind of all over the place sometimes. But I played Mistress Quickly, and then the French maid, which we made a sassy gay male character.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it all stopped. Like I stopped getting work because I had just done the roles that were good for me that year, and I went a year just not working. And that's when I turned back to drag. And then I stopped looking for new auditions because I was content as a drag queen and I was making my living as a drag queen and I was getting my performance fix. And then my friend Brandon Ivey, who now is cast, I think he just assistant directed First Date here.
Okay.
He tipped me off to Spring Awakening, and I had never seen the musical before. But he's like, I know you're really content doing drag, but this role could be perfect for you as a boy. And I went in for Moritz and ended up getting it, and that was kind of my reintroduction to the Seattle theater scene, and it was in musical theater. And like that, I went from being known as a classical actor to being a musical theater actor, and that's pretty much been all my work since then. Because we went from Moritz in Spring Awakening to Angel and Rent,
right.
which was one of the most rewarding experiences for me.
I love the wig in that one.
I love it too. I love that they let me be a redhead in it.
Yeah.
And Rent was the first musical I had ever seen when I was 9. I guess that was my first introduction to, but I didn't
like
get
you said,
it.
the rock music.
Yeah, and I didn't fully understand it because I was 10. My aunt took me to see it for my birthday.
Oh,
and
wow.
She knew my interest in theater, so that was my birthday present.
That's a cool aunt that takes a 10-year-old to Rent. I like that.
I mean, and she told me like, there's going to be some themes and things you don't understand. I really didn't know enough about the AIDS epidemic to fully understand what was going on in the show, but I got the gist of it. And then I didn't really revisit that musical until I was in it.
Right, and you also did Hedwig. Hedwig is like one of your,
Yeah.
your like, dream roles. I'd like to see you do Hedwig again.
I'd like to see
It's
me
coming to
do Hedwig
Broadway.
again. Yeah.
You know, Patrick Harris could maybe share. Maybe you can have like a matinee Hedwig. Or,
Well, Hedwig was it was my senior project in school.
Okay.
And then it was pretty much right after, like, it all lined up for me to do Hedwig right after the announcement of Drag Race came out.
Right.
So no one had seen me yet on Drag Race. They just knew I was going to be on it.
Right.
And so that boosted ticket sales a little bit, but we really had to do our work on Hedwig. We weren't getting a free pass just because of the RuPaul's Drag Race thing.
What is it like to do RuPaul's Drag Race and to not be able to tell people you knew you were one of the finalists? You don't actually find out. You didn't find out you actually won till May.
Yeah, I didn't find out until America found out that I won.
So like for months.
But I knew I had a 1 in 3 chance of winning.
Right.
From the moment I got back, and it was really, really.
Did you really not tell people that you were down to the top 3?
What it was is I never said those words. But my roommate is also like my best friend and also helps me do drag in Seattle and is now my tour manager and personal assistant.
I love you, a tour manager.
I call him 30% of Jinkx Monsoon now because he upkeeps my wigs and outfits and he packs the suitcases and so he didn't have to be told. Like when I packed up every last bit of drag I had and left for a month and a half, and he kind of did the math, like, well, she's been gone this much time, and I came back and I wasn't, unhappy with my experience. So I think he put 2 and 2 together, and I think that's the same for other people. But I never outright said where I got, and because I'm such a goody two-shoes. I was so nervous that like they bugged my apartment and that if I like said anything, then I was going to get kicked out or they were going to edit me out of the show somehow and just make it final 2 this year.
So what was I'm trying to remember what the prize was. You get according to your jewelry, you're rich. So I'm glad to hear that.
This is my. She made this. This is a. Oh, hold on. This is Jamie Von Stratton design. She's my preferred dressmaker in Seattle. I actually normally wear this with a giant blinged out Star of David as well.
Nice.
And I call this my, with the glasses as well, it's my Boca Raton retirement outfit. But yeah, I won $100,000, which
Did you buy anything exciting?
I haven't touched the $100,000 yet.
Okay.
I've been smart
Just
with the
sitting there?
money. I was smart with the money I made in rent and Hedwig, and smart with the money I'm making in touring. That I haven't had to touch my prize money yet. And I really don't want to, some of it's going to get invested into the album I'm making, but I really want to save the prize money.
Which is called The Inevitable Album.
The Inevitable Album.
A brilliant title.
I came up with it because someone was like, are you ever going to make an album? And I was like, eventually I'm going to have to make an album. I mean, inevitably I'm going to make the Inevitable Album. And so then that became the title of it.
It's a great title.
And when we go on tour, it'll be the Inevitable Tour. So we're excited about that.
Okay, so you got the money, and then like a lifetime supply
well,
of what?
Normally they say lifetime supply. This time they said sickening supply. So.
Oh, okay, they put a limit
So
on
it's just a. I think it's because
of what, makeup?
I've heard rumors. Yeah, Color Revolution makeup.
Okay.
I've heard rumors of the past girls who've gotten lifetime supplies will show up at the store with just a bag and just like clean out a store or something.
Like, hello, NYX Cosmetics. I remember that.
I don't know if that's true, but maybe the makeup brands got sick of them like just coming in and taking a whole store's inventory. But I have no idea if that's true. But so I get let's just say a buttload of Color Revolution cosmetics, and then I get a customized cruise from Alan Chuck.
.travel.
Yeah, and I'll also be going on the Drag Stars cruise this year.
Broadway is a good goal, right? I really want this to happen. I mean, we talked about this when I met you the first time, and I know you love Bernadette Peters. You haven't met Bernadette Peters yet, right?
I haven't.
We got to get Sondheim and Bernadette Peters down to the Vaudevillians.
I'd love for that.
Right, a front table. We made a list of some roles we want to see you do, and I think some of these you already love. And what do you think of Vera Charles in Mame? Do you know that one?
Vera Charles? I'm actually more into Mame.
You want to be Mame?
I want to be Mame, and I want
Okay.
Alaska to be Vera Charles.
Oh,
we
you know
actually
what?
we've
Okay,
talked
you
about
just,
this a few
You just
times.
made that a better idea.
Yeah.
Alaska, I love that. Let's do that. That's really good. And then Into the Woods, The Witch, which is one of your dream roles.
I mean, of course, I'd play Jack if Jack got offered to me
Right.
over the Witch, but the Witch is really my dream role, and I think I can handle it.
The other ones we had were Little Edie, Grey Gardens, which of course we all saw you play that. You played Little Edie on Drag Race, which was incredible. Mrs. Lovett. And Sweeney
That's my
Todd.
dream role.
Okay.
The Witch and Mrs. Lovett are constantly wrestling as my dream role.
Mrs. Lovett would be really good.
I think Mrs. Lovett just by a hair trumps the Witch
Right.
for my
Okay.
dream role.
And number one, Hedwig, because I missed it.
Yeah.
I didn't get to see you do it out in
Well-
Seattle. So
Well, hopefully, when Neil Patrick Harris has, I'm sure, an amazing run and needs his first replacement, I'm not going to complain being Neil's
he
first
hasn't reached out
replacement.
yet.
Not personally. I know Neil watches Drag Race, and I know he's fans of lots of queens from the show. I know I know she hangs out with Willem and Sharon sometimes. I've never met him, but I met his paramour, very polite
yeah.
and very dashing.
You know, you could also like host the Tonys if he drops out of that. I would love a Jinkx Monsoon Tony hosting.
I mean,
gig.
I'm a huge fan of Neil. So, if he wanted to do anything with me, basically,
Yeah.
I'd play any role, with, beside, after. I'd co-host. I really like him a lot.
Well, right now you're Kitty Witless.
Yeah.
And the Vaudevillians at the Laurie Beachman Theater, named after one of my favorite Broadway
Who
stars.
played Grisabella?
Oh my
right?
God! Yes,
Yes,
she sure did.
yes.
She's also the star to be in Annie, the original. The NYC.
Did they change Annie a lot for the movie? Because I don't think I've ever
NYC
seen
is
it.
not in the movie.
Yeah, I've never
That's
seen
why.
a
That's
live
why.
production. I've only
That's
ever seen Carol
exactly-
Burnett and
that's why you don't know
that
it.
wretched little child. No, I'm joking. No. Mrs. Hannigan. I'd play Mrs. Hannigan.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll ever be the same now that Jane Lynch got her hands on it. She probably butched up Mrs. Hannigan, huh?
Right. Well, I am excited to see you do anything. I'm so thrilled, and everyone needs to see the Vaudevillians. If you can get in, there's like a line out the door every night.
Well,
literally a line down
yeah.
42nd Street.
Well, I think there's still tickets available in October.
Okay.
I
Plan
think
ahead.
maybe just a few left in September. And then, it's been extended so much, who's to say it's not going to get extended again or remounted sometimes.
Yeah,
so.
it has to. It's really brilliant. And congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Congratulations, as they say.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. And thank you so much for coming. It's so great
Oh,
to see
yeah,
you
I had
again.
a blast.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.